Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Alaikum salam, sir. Good day to you. How are you?
Very good. I'm fine, thank you. It's a overcast morning here in central Kentucky. Very
Okay.
nice and quiet, high summer. Oh man, you can hear the grass growing.
Yeah.
Alhamdulillah.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Mhm.
All
So,
right.
Alhamdulillah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I have not given too much thought to uh, what we last discussed with respect to um, slavery and servitude with respect to our relationship to Allah and to each other and also to ourselves, because all of this is just a continuum as I can see it. Um, with my Tawheed spectacles on, I'm still trying to find the right words. Maybe I used to know them. Anyway, my good wife and our pillow talk the other day, before getting out of bed, had something interesting to say, and which she wanted to remark with me and pass on to you, and to get the nudetics perspective with respect to this word and our discussion so far of slavery and servitude. Um, and so what she had to say was that, well, there's this word in the Arabic with respect to a verse related to a conversation that Prophet Suleiman had with Allah. And the word is jasad, or something to that effect. And loosely translated, it means, if you listen to people like Imran Hussein, it means a body without a soul. And this sort of came out of her um, spontaneously as a result of a conversation we had on some of the videos and movies that we've seen about zombies and soulless entities, if you will. And there's an element of this that takes place, I know from my studies of the Jesuits, where the initiate, when by the time they get to the fourth degree, they're pretty much in a similar state. In other words, they have to obey the all along the way during the 14 years of initiation. They are denying themselves their natural desires and wishes and use of their own willpower, and passing their own will over to the um, uh, for the use of their superiors. And this is part of the initiation process of several cults. And that's what happens, for example, and remember the story of Jim Jones and those poor people down in, was it Ghana, who
Yeah.
followed him. And that was an experiment along the same lines. So the principles are the same. This initiation process, the evacuation of the will by your own volition, so you turn your soul over to the use of another being. Okay. And in that sense, if you're going to be so psychologically repressed, you might as well be soulless, because that is a diminution of your own development of your own fitra. See, it's everything. It's the absolute counter fitra, if you can think of it that way. So, this word jasad, with respect to Suleiman, and then Suleiman's prayer afterwards, which I fear may have been maybe mistranslated, because as it sets, it doesn't make much sense in the Tawhid sense of things. But I think Suleiman was fearful of what he had just experienced, and he didn't want that ever to happen on the earth again. That's the way I would like to read it, so to speak. And I don't know how close to the truth I am there, whether I'm close or far. I really can't say. I'm being as honest as I can. But I think my dear wife brought up an interesting experience, and it was a word that is related to this topic, slavery versus servitude. Well, what was it that was placed on the throne of Solomon? If I can pass the talking stick over to you, my dear instructor, Bilal, inshallah.
Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. I'm not as familiar with the details of the story of Suleiman. I do know that the few attempts that I made at understanding that narrative, I kept coming across people who would interpret his name into the English language as representing the soul of man. Suleiman or Solomon, the soul of man.
Mm-hmm.
And just in my brief studies of the connections in these words, I also know that it's English rendering Solomon, Solomon, or soul o man.
Mm-hmm.
You know that soul is the Latin word for sun.
Yes.
And the MON represents the moon. So his name also represents a combination of the energies emanating from both the sun and the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dealing with an understanding of energies, as far as I can see, with Suleiman. An understanding of energies that actually represent the strength of the soul, what is keeping the soul activated. Once human beings lose the connection with those energies is when the soul becomes deactivated. So these soulless people, as I see them, are people who have somehow have had their souls deplugged or unplugged. It's not that they don't have souls.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yes.
You can have money in the bank and not know it, and therefore you can't use it.
Yes.
So we all have souls as Allah created us to have souls, because the soul is going to be the final determinant in the judgment. And it was said the same for the wisdom of ancient Egypt, that they were going to weigh the soul on the balance and, you know, the feather and, you know, all of those things that they want to see if the soul weighs equal or less or more. You know, Allah gives it a different way in the Quran, you know, as far as how he's going to be weighing the worth and also the devaluation of the soul. And that's going to be the final determinant in the judgment, the reward and punishment aspects of the deen, as taught by Al-Quran. So let's talk about this word soul. I have said, based on my Nunetics study of letters and letter combinations, that the letters S and L, when put together, have to do with things that come together, things that were intended to be together. The soul was intended to work as various components, but with all of those components respecting each other and working in concert with each other. The soul is not just a spiritual entity, as most people think about it as being spiritual. The soul also has the intellect as being part and parcel of its content, if you will. So it's not just a spiritual good feeling in the soul or a spiritual bad feeling in the soul. Is that when the soul comes into these particular frequencies, it's able to register thoughts in the intellect that then go on to make decisions about what was felt, good or bad, right or wrong, clean or filthy. So the soul is these various components that are registering various levels of frequency that are intended to bring all of these things together in order to give greater light to our circumstances, as the soul in the sky, the sun in the sky, gives greater insight into the things in its environment. Now, I see what was instituted in ancient Egypt, and even before that in ancient Abyssinia, that came to us as the 7 basic levels of the chakra energy system. My study has led me to believe that the 3 lowest levels of those energies, the 3 out of the 10, out of the 7, with the 4th being the middle chakra. So there are 3 below. There's the middle chakra that's colored green. And then there are the 3 that are above, leading to the activation of what they call the pineal gland, being the 7th. So that's the higher heaven. What's existing beneath the heart are the lower stratas. Some would even say hell, because those 3 energies are connected to material drives for physical pleasure, material comfort, those kinds of things that are outlined in Maslow's hierarchy and his 7 levels of the pyramid.
Sure.
So as I see it, the scheme, if you will, of Shaitan is to keep human beings within the lower registers of those frequencies, to keep us tied into only those things that satisfy material urges, materialism, biology, biological urges, sex, play, fun, food, drink, merriment, all of those things that are not sins in and of themselves. They are only sins when we allow ourselves to be locked into those energies, to the point where those energies become what the Quran calls our ilah, our God. Yeah, the thing that we turn our major focus to. They are there for a reason, but they are not there to be worshiped. They are not there to be placated to the point where our higher development becomes suppressed. Because when that higher development becomes suppressed, it begins to atrophy. Our spiritual quests, our true and sincere emotions and love for people and compassion for creatures and for humanity, all of that becomes suppressed when we over focus on the materialistic bottom 3 energies that are all created in order to give us a fundamental foundation in the world of material things. We need a foundation for that so that we don't float off into the hills like many of the gurus and the people have done who have left society. They just left humanity. Hey, man, you go for what you know. I'm going with God. I'm with the big guy upstairs. And the world continues to suffer because the goodness that those priest class and I hate to refer to them as priest class because it's really a different group of people I'm talking about when I talk about the priest class. But nevertheless, the people who see themselves as spokespersons for God, that's who I'm speaking about now.
Yeah.
The help that they could be bringing society by keeping their focus on what needs to be done for society, that help is lost. So the people on the bottom continue to suffer. The majority of the world are operating within the 3 lowest rungs of that energy ladder.
Yeah.
Majority of us are there. And they keep us there through commercialization of material products, things that they convince us that we have to have, the branding, all of these things connected to the commercialization of the minds of humanity, to believe that you can't do without this product, without this thing. You can't do without this girl with this shape. We learn these things in grade school, man. You can get me a figure 8, And if you don't get one, then you feel sad about yourself as a human being. You're a little bit overweight. No, nobody's going to want me, Shirley gets all the guys, or Bud, he's got all the money. He's got the new car in high school. And, I'm still coming to school on the school bus, that kind of thing. So now we're getting into the origins of the English word, the occult origins of the English word solid. soul lid. The lid for the soul, but it's an artificial lid that's created. Let me explain what I mean. Those three lowest energy registers in the chakras begin with the root chakra, which controls safety, our need to be safe and secure. It rises up to the sacral chakra, which again governs our pleasure principle and our need for reproduction. Now that we're safe and secure, let's have some babies around here. You know, so that's operating in the human system. The human biology is saying, okay, it's cool enough now. There's no danger at present. So let's go ahead and reproduce ourselves so that we can establish our way. And that's fine. Allah created us like that. That's the second level. The third level is the solar plexus level. And the solar plexus is governing our personal willpower and our personal ego. We have a higher ego above the heart chakra, above the fourth chakra. But the first ego that human beings come into, and it's evident in every baby born, the first ego, meaning the way that we see ourselves, is in the lower strata of those energies. When the child begins to look in the mirror and say, I'm in junior high school now, you know, this is a child is coming into puberty. Mirror, mirror on the wall, you know, and the girl is, you know, she wants her hair just right now, not for her girlfriends to say that's a nice hairdo, but for the possible boyfriend that they're fishing for when they go to high school or junior high school now. So the personal ego comes into the picture. And that's the third level. Now, if Shaitan, whatever that is able to issue a set of influences into the society, which keeps people floating no higher than the third level of self-aggrandizement, ego, look at me, look at how I look. It's all about me. It's not about you. It's about me. You know, that level of chakra development, that's supposed to be there when you're 12 years old and 13 and about to go through puberty. You have to pay more attention to yourself, how you look in the mirror, you know. So, but you're not supposed to stay there psychologically. If Shaitan can create a series of influences that force you to stay no higher, to float no higher, to rise no higher than personal ego, now you can possibly see how the greatest crimes in the world, such as racism and chauvinism and all of these other isms, classism and all of these things, now you can see how all of them, without exception, are actually tied into that personal ego issue. How I look as a race, how I look as a bank account, how you can go on and on, how I look as a male, forget about the female. Yeah. Ancient Arabs were thinking like this, and they were burying their baby girls in the sand when Muhammad was among them, or drowning them at sea because girls can't fight in our wars. No, dummy, but you need more girls to produce more of the boys that you're looking for. So that's how stupid an idea that was. But that's what happens when your focus is on the self as an ego, as a personal ego. And that was their issue. And again, all of these many years later, that became the issue for the Western world when they began to come into power out of Europe. Look at what all of these other people in the world have. Oh, look at what's going on in Ghana. Look at the gold that's in Ghana. Look at the diamonds that are in South Africa. So the European started to look out into the world, and he saw issues of wealth and power and that he didn't have, but his personal ego wanted those things. So he designed various schemes to wrestle that wealth from the people that he saw having it. Why again? Because he was not able to rise above the solar plexus in terms of his mental energies and focus. Now, right above the solar plexus is where the heart chakra is, the fourth chakra, the heart chakra. That's when you begin to come into a more expansive inclusion of people outside of what placates your personal ego. That's when you begin to say, yeah, I like looking good, but I'm not satisfied with those other people looking as bad as they look. You know, why are they suffering like that? And the heart begins to become moved by that and begins to institute actions and policies to help bring up the register of those people around them that are suffering from these unfortunate situations. That's how true humans are supposed to grow. I come into wealth, I look out into the world and I see people suffering because of the lack of what I've been blessed with. I then feel obligated to share some of this wealth or to show them how to build wealth themselves. That's true human growth. But when you put an artificial lid over the solar plexus energy, and you don't allow people to look beyond themselves, as was very interestingly demonstrated during the whole COVID issue. Yes. It's all about me. Grandma, no, you can't come over, Grandma. I know you're 92 years old and you might not make it into next week, but I'm not coming to see you, Grandma.
Yeah.
Even with the 3 masks, I'm not. Why? Because the focus was directed towards the self, the ego. In the same house, husbands and wives weren't even sleeping together because the other one might catch it. The foolishness that they have laid out in the name of science, which is false science.
Of course it
is going to be studied for many years after this. It's hard for us to see it now because we're in it. But a few years from now, when some smart people among us look back, and many of them are doing so as we speak, they're going to see that the whole world, and I think this may be the first time in history that this has happened to the whole world at the same time, that a plan to dumb down the masses has been effectuated to this degree. I think it worked even better than the conspirators thought it would.
Yes.
I don't think they thought we'd be this stupid.
Yeah, they're surprised, but you know, they've been doing this now for centuries. And it was after the Korean War when they really honed their skills on that population. They took some of those principles and then they formed Singapore on a different moral basis. And the principles that they used in Korea and in Singapore, they put together in China.
Yeah.
And now they're exporting the whole shebang.
With the help of the technology. See, that's why it's become a one world scheme with the help of technology.
Yes.
Now, riding above that 4th chakra, which again brings us into levels of compassion, love, care, kindness, consideration, all of that is the 4th level. And it's colored green in the chakra chart. It's colored green because it represents a kind of garden. I believe that's also what the Quran is speaking to when it speaks about reaching Jannah.
Yes.
Yeah. The Quran speaks about 3 levels of the soul. Nafsin la'amara, the desirous soul. Nafsin la'awama, the second one. The soul that has a conflict within it. It has a conflict as to what is this right? Should I do this or should I, And then above that is nafsin mutma'inna, which means they translate it as the soul at rest. I don't like that translation because it suggests that the soul has died, when we say rest in peace. Yeah. So if it has died at all, it has died to those other levels of material desire on that level, on that extreme level. But then it says, after mutma'inna, Allah gives us the greetings to enter into his garden, into his Jannah, but as his ibad, the word we used last week, as his so-called slaves, enter you into my garden, see? But as ibad. And as you remember, I translated that word ibad as initiates.
Yes.
And if you're initiating someone into something, especially if they've just gotten a new job and the supervisor is explaining to them the details of the job, the initiate had better be paying attention.
Yes, he had best.
Yeah, I mean, you could cut your finger off on one of those
That
machines. So,
correct. Hmm.
so the initiate has to be all eyes and ears in this one. So that's what Allah wants for us. He wants us to be all eyes and ears when it comes to the best case scenario for our human growth and development into excellence. That's all the garden is in this instance. Yes, there is one after you leave this physical realm. Yeah, you go. Yeah, I'm not denying that. But what I'm saying is Allah says that there are two gardens. He calls them Jannatain.
Hmm.
And Allah also says, وَابْتَغِ فِيمَا أَتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا. That we are to seek with everything that He has availed us, our home in that latter existence, that life, that Jannah. He says, but do not neglect your share, your individual share of the dunya.
Yes.
And he says in another place, who told you, speaking to all of us, who told you that the good things, the khair, the beneficial things of this dunya, that's the word Allah is using, of the dunya, the thing they try to scare us away from wanting. Who told you, Allah said, that the good things of the dunya were not for you? He said, they are for you in this life, in the life of the dunya. You're supposed to have dunya. And then he says, and they will be exclusively for you in the akhirah, the afterlife. So what does that tell me? It tells me that the good things of this material world that I'm gathering through those energies, those three lowest energies that we discussed earlier, yeah, those good things are for you. You want a nice car to ride around in, that's fine. You want a nice home to live in, to raise your family in, with a nice front yard, backyard, greenery, trees, lake by your property. I'm not saying nothing wrong with that. That's not just for, the Rockefellers. That's for you too if you want it. However, it will be exclusively for you at some point in the future. Those bad boys and girls have had that all their lives. They've inherited those things as a bloodline inheritance. Right? But Allah said, no, the earth is to be inherited by the righteous. The Bible says the poor shall inherit the earth. The Quran says not the poor, because many of the poor people are as corrupt as you want to be now. So Allah says the ones who are practicing the righteousness are the inheritors of al-ard, the earth. So I said that just to say some things about what kinds of influences can actually impact the human soul, which will cause the soul to discontinue evolving and actually begin either devolving or just becoming stagnant to the point where it becomes self-eliminating. When you look into the eyes of people today and you talk to them about important issues, and you can see how distanced they are from caring about people outside of themselves, and many of them are distanced from caring about themselves. You realize that there's something going wrong in the soul department. Imam W.D. Muhammad spoke about this particular instance in history. He passed in 2008. He spoke about this not more than a year before he died. He said that the world is about to experience what he called the great elimination of the soul. And he said, and soon. Now, I'm not saying he was any kind of prophet that predicted this whole COVID mess, and it doesn't stop at the COVID scheme. That's just one piece of the puzzle that Shaitan has fashioned to bring humanity into a total meltdown of their human worth. People think that Satan is out here to push racism. They think that. No, the devil. That's how I know the devil, because he's pushing white supremacy. They never mentioned the pushing of black supremacy. But they mentioned the pushing of white supremacy, or the rich people are the evil people in the world. And they have these very, very separated ideas about what Shaitan is and promotes, when in reality, all of those separations are really just pieces of the puzzle related to his total scheme, which he never lets you see the totality of. He never lets you know what the end game is for his scheme, but Allah lets you know.
Yes.
Shaitan's end game is to disqualify you, humanly speaking.
Mm.
Because when Allah said he was going to create a human being and make him the leader, the Khalifa fil ard, in the earth, Iblis started protesting. I could see him making his, with his magic markers, making his protest sign as Allah was giving him that instruction.
Yeah,
And he
right.
said, I cannot submit to one that you have created from soft clay fashioned into shine. That's not going to be me. It ain't going to be me.
Yeah.
See, the ego, the personal ego.
Yeah, sure.
And they say that the jinn was made from fire. Well, that's the solar plexus, isn't it?
Yes,
That's
that could
solar. That's
be.
solar fire. It's the
Hmm.
ego that's speaking.
Hmm.
So if I'm able to come from before them, from behind them, from their right and from their left, I can circle them with my fire. They'll be mine. I can capture and captivate these people.
Hmm.
I can heat these people up whenever I want. I can burn them to a crisp if I want to, because I'm controlling their environment. See, before them, behind them, I'm controlling their future. I say I'm going to come from before them. I'm planning for their future.
Yes, right.
I'm coming from behind them means that what you see happening in the past, I'm responsible for that also. The swine flu. No, this ain't the swine flu. This is the COVID. but
Right.
but if you look behind me to the swine flu and those things that you mentioned that created those other governments and those situations, economic situations, yeah, I did that too. See,
Yeah, right.
the ego's still talking. I did that too. If you look to the right, I control the people on the right.
Yes.
Yeah, I control the Republicans, or whichever way you want to see the right, Oh, I control the left also. I control the Democrats, see? Or you can look at it as I control the right. I control your strengths because the right side is usually the strongest side, right? But I also control your weaknesses. So Shaitan set an early scheme up for capturing humanity that involved the four quarters of the world. But the way to escape his scheme, Dr. Omar Zaid, is to ascend. He's in front of me. He's behind me. He's to my right and to my left. The only way out of this is an Indiana Jones move. To find a rope and climb upwards out of this scheme. So if you're not on the human trail of ascension, then you're not going to escape the claws of Satan that the Christians mistakenly call Santa Claus. It's really Satan's claws. All that materialism, gifts and toys and red passion and all of that. That's not Santa Claus. That's Satan claws. That's how Satan gets you. He comes down through the roof, right there, and he comes into your fireplace, the belly, full of fire, full of acids, and he distributes all of the things that he knows you like, the candy and the toys, and then he's out of there, and he leaves you to just await his return this time next year. And that's how most of us are doing. We're awaiting the next government welfare check next month. We're waiting the next set of food stamps. We're waiting the next pornography film or movie. But we have been completely captured, and the soul has been damaged because of that. So that, I believe, is a part of this great elimination of the human soul.
My immediate response to what you've just said here is it's kind of like, well, with respect to the ascension, is this, that means that this developmental process can reach the three lower chakra, and you could even become conscious and enter into the realm of the heart chakra. But you can also become stuck there, it seems, without an ascension. And perhaps this is what allowed Suleiman, if I can refer to him, to see this and then make that dua. You see, this is
good
frightening.
Observation. Yeah,
this is very frightening. Okay, I'm just struck. Oh, see, I'm right there with you when you said this thing about the ascension, and I'm looking for the ascension, and you don't go there yet. You see, you kind of just, wow. Well, if you don't go there, what happens? Okay, so you've got the three lower appetites, and then you've got this awareness. So, and if you don't develop this empathy, not just for your fellow human beings or hominids or however you want to look at the very many of us, but also for creation itself, and for the creatures.
Yeah.
You see, so this is something that I think is maybe somewhere along the line, some ancient elder of unknown name except to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, look, we can't get better than this. We're just going to live right here with this sacred tree, and that becomes our tree of life, and we live in harmony with nature. And if there's gold in those hills that make sacred, we leave the gold there, because it obviously has something to do with mineralizing whatever goes into the rest of the waters that keep us healthy. So leave the gold alone. They knew it was there.
Yes.
So somebody made that decision, and then along comes the unredeemed, unascended white man's burden, you see, and thinks that, hey, my bloodline, my loyalty, my flag, my nation, my religion, my faith, my cult deserves and demands that I do this for the sake of God and all good Christians.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gee, so they're stuck there. Okay. This empathy goes no further, and that becomes a very dangerous tyranny, because you've got ignoramuses filled with the wrong kind of use of their intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh my God.
Spot on.
This is horrifying.
Yeah.
If Suleiman saw that, you see, or whoever Suleiman is, we don't know. But I like your interpretation of the name. Okay, it's obviously there's meaning there, and so it's an imaginative personification of what is not just theoretically true, but absolutely true. You see? So this is what's so wonderful about the scripture. When you get to that level and you can unpack these imaginations and turn them into words that paint the picture that they really want to paint, and here we are, thousands of years later. Hey, I'm very, very pleased to be part of that process and to experience it, you see.
Yeah.
Because this is an enlightenment that is liberating. And when you say liberating, well, there's only one way to liberate, and that is to ascend and what? Become enslaved by the truth. So how do you do that? If you're already penetrating the heart chakra and you've absorbed empathy, the question we haven't answered is where that comes from, you see. Yeah. Now, so if we absorb this empathy and we continue with the ascension and we begin to use our faculties, our senses, our intelligence, and the balance between the right and left in a sensible manner that's going to benefit not just ourselves, but all of creation and our brothers and sisters, something that's going to be pleasing in the eyes of our source creator. Hey, that's a wonderful thing to do, you see. That's ascension. So that is a resurrection. Is it a resurrection? Did we die already? You see, that's another part of the narrative we haven't covered. So I'm looking at Michelangelo's Vitruvian Man, because there you have the male, the female, they're kind of melded together, and they've got this cross, perfect pentagram form, but he also adds a twist, a slight turn to the feet, you see, and with the legs. So that's a conscious movement, you see. So one is the original position, and then there's another one that must be a turn, You see, well, what kind of a turn? I don't know. It's probably have to look into the astrology of the thing.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting here putting this all together, and here we are ascending. And then what do we want? We want to become this Vitruvian individual. We want to become fully human in the capacity that allows us to begin to realize the implications of the term Khalifa. You see, so that we then, because we're somehow, if there was excuse, I'm going to wander off here a little bit. If there was an original sin, there must have been an original obligation as well. You see? So, so there's this obligation on this creature called Adam. And, Allah said, well, will you do it? Will you do it? And everyone said no. But Adam said, hey, I'll do it.
Party over here.
All right. Yeah, I got no problem with that, teacher. Yeah, I'll be right there. Yeah. You remember that apple I brought you? So anyway, yeah. So if we're returning to take up that obligation, all of this is part of that learning process,
Absolutely.
the initiatory process to become fully human. Well, if you're going to stay there at the ghetto level, you see, which I've just seen imported to the 4-H club here in Casey County, Kentucky. I've seen it now. The kids who used to go to rodeo, too big to ride the horses anymore, too pot-bellied. But they got them dancing to ghetto, blasted in ghetto music, and they're kind of line dancing to it, and they're talking about doing this and putting your hand up here and then shaking your booty and
commandments.
These are supposed to be cow people and sheep people and herders and farmers.
But they've been turned into cow words and sheeple people.
Yeah. I just saw that with my own eyes this morning.
It's the manipulation of the frequencies that we spoke about.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I've seen this transition here in 2 years. 2 years, because this was not the case 2 years ago. And I looked at the camp counselors, and there was not one manly face amongst them. Not one manly face. And I thought, oh my God.
This is a scheme. This is a scheme that they have been working on for decades, at least for decades.
Yeah.
And it is the masculinization of the male and in some cases, masculinization of the female or the over accentuation of what the woman is supposed to believe a female is.
Yeah.
So if they can get the woman, if they can get that woman to believe that she is T's and A's all the way, that's what the man wants. So that's what she concentrates on. How firm are my breasts, and even if I happen to become pregnant and deliver a child, get that baby off of my tit, because they're going to ruin my Marilyn Monroe figure. So again, keeping the energies locked into the lower chakras, keeping a lid, an artificial lid, so that the soul then takes on a lid, soul lid, solid, so that you're living your life totally in the realm of things physical and material or solid. So you're placating all of those urges and those desires that are in the solid register, but you're not able to grasp and ascend to the higher degrees that Allah is constantly calling you to. See, what Christians need to understand about their own language is that there's a difference between Jesus and Christ. Jesus is those lower registers of the soul, where he's trying to regulate and balance your interest in material things, the fisherman, the helping the homeless, the man without a place to go. He's trying to show you how to regulate those energies so that your material existence becomes more balanced.
Yeah.
But Christ is the resurrected one, the ascended one. And it's not his name. It's not his last name. Right. It's an action that happens once you rise into that fourth chakra's heart register and stop being sensitive to only your personal concerns coming up out of that ego. And then the higher register of the heart chakra is able to then dispense its charities to people that it doesn't even know the name of, to people that it's never saw before, can't even communicate because they don't speak the same language. See? So when you and I as individuals take on that task, we're taking on the role of that Christ that's spoken of in the Bible, not in the Quran, but in the Bible, that Christ that becomes magnanimous when it comes to giving and caring and sharing and pointing out the frailties and things. Stay away from there because that's going to bring you down, or go in that direction because that's going to elevate you. So, and the Quran has a similar assessment of these same energies that are able to uplift, or if you give yourself into these weaknesses, it's going to take you down to the lowest of the low. Allah tells us that he created us as human beings to reach the highest of heights because of the organizational design he inputted into us as an operating system, if you will, fi ahsani taqweem, in the most excellent organizational design, right? But he said that thereafter, as a consequence of our own decisions, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, we bring ourselves down, or we allow the circumstances to bring us down to even the lowest of those things that are considered low. So there's always that choice that human beings are left to make. When we acquiesce our responsibility for making those choices, that's when those other energies come in and start making choices for you.
Yes.
We call it Satan. You know, we give it these names that we think it's some spooky thing, you know, floating outside the window or outside your bathroom, waiting for you to flush the toilet so he can come in and do something to you, right? Hey, caught you with your pants down. I got you now. I'm Satan. The Muslims are funny people. They say the jinn is floating around the bathroom waiting for you to use it so he can come in and get into you. What bathroom were we talking about 1,500 years ago? They had outdoor latrines and holes in the ground. So where did y'all get this hadith about Satan waiting outside or inside the bathroom for you? It's crazy kinds of stuff that Muslims have adopted from other nutty people in previous religions. Hate to put it like that, but these people, many of these people were just, I don't know what planet they were living on when they came up with these narratives. But we have to begin to make clear delineations between what makes sense in our deen and what should at least be, if you don't discard it altogether, just put it on the side and say, it's just not congruent with what I'm reading in the Quran, or it's not congruent with what the best of the Bible is trying to teach me as a Christian, or the best of the Torah is trying to teach me as a Hebrew follower of Moses. Put those things aside and choose from those things that you know to be in concert with the best. See, that's the Quran's advice. And choose the best thereof. Allah knew we would come across things that were questionable, even in the Quran. So Allah says, well, then don't get all tied up into trying to believe and follow and understand everything that's in the Quran. No, choose the best thereof. And you'll know that best as soon as you come across it. So we have to be promoters of excellence for the human soul, because even that dormant soul can be salvaged. See that SL in salvage? Yeah, because it's also dealing with the property of the soul. Salvation. Yeah. Consolidation, bringing the soul back into a level of oneness. And then lastly, Doctor, I would say to you that in following up on last week's conversation regarding being initiates of Allah, people who consciously, willingly give ourselves over to obedience to the word of Allah, to the guidance, really, the hudan of Allah. That when we understand Allah, even outside of the mistranslation that has been given to us in the Quran, when it says, Kul huwallahu ahad, to say or to express that Allah is one. The concept of one in the mind of most humans is that it's to be followed by two, and then three. So to say one to the conscious mind might be something different than that idea of God quote unquote, being one as it registers in the subconscious mind that knows that it's to be followed by a two. So I like to use the term unique. Allahu Ahad, Allah is unique, and nothing can compare with the unique. Nothing can compare with the unique.
Yeah. That's a welcome refinement. Thank you very much.
Alhamdulillah. Thank Allah. So I'll leave these last few minutes for you.
I want to revisit this imagination again. Let's take another look at Suleiman, his throne, and how it is that the concept of servitude, servanthood, and slavery fit in to the before and after of his salvation, if you will, next week. I think this is a wonderful dissertation as a result of an exchange between us. And I find it very stimulating and an honor to make these exchanges with you, sir.
Likewise.
Alhamdulillah. So may it please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to meet again next week and take this a step further according to his will.
Inshallah.
Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To my brother. Thank you. And greetings to your family, as usual.